Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me in this PMP Exam Preparation course. My name is Ammar Mango. I will be your trainer for this course. I've been doing PMP training and project management for the last 25 to 30 years. I've done this training so many times. I enjoy it as I see it, as I see people pass this exam, as I see the exam evolving. While it's not getting any easier, but it's getting more interesting, how PMI is changing the exam and changing the PMP. Without further ado, let's get on with it. So how will I help you prepare? First of all, you will apply for certification. You will set the test date. You will create a plan to prepare, because we're talking about planning. This is project management at the end of the day. We will execute this plan, which means you study. And then you pass the test and celebrate. Sounds easy. Let's make it that easy. So now, a little bit more detail, elaboration, which is part of project management, on how I will help you prepare. First of all, we will provide you information that you need to know about the exam, because you need to understand what the exam is trying to do. I was on a committee that actually developed exam questions. Not recently, because if it was recently, I'm not allowed to train on the subject. So I will tell you a little bit about how we put the exam questions and how PMI thinks about putting the exam questions, and that will help you a lot. I will provide you with what you need to know and understand to pass the exam. So there are things you need to understand for the exam. There are things written in the PIM book. Other things are not exactly in the PIM book, but you need to know about it. I call it the spirit of PMI, and I will talk about that more. Also, we will provide you with the study material you will need to prepare and pass the PMP exam, and provide you with detailed coverage of the complex concepts and tools. And this is where I probably will elaborate and give you examples, practical real-time examples on how the PIM book and the project management principles are applied in real life. And this is key for passing the exam, because in the exam they want to make sure you can apply the principles in real life, not just know the material. So before we start with the PMP exam details, we need to talk about the Project Management Institute, PMI. PMI, if you have not done so already, I would like you to go and visit their website, which is www.pmi.org. PMI is one of the first, if not the first, organizations that was set as a nonprofit organization to advance project management profession. Now, the exam itself came about in 1984, the PMP certification exam, and it is based on the PIM book, probably one of the most famous standards in project management. The PIM book, the Project Management Body of Knowledge. Now it is in the 6th edition. It just came out, the 6th edition. Every 4 years, PMI changes the standard. They refine it. They don't change it completely. They refine it, let's say, 20% of it gets refined. So what we will cover here is the 6th edition, which probably will be valid for another 4 years. So probably until 2022 or so. Some statistics of interest related to PMI. PMI membership is around 500,000 people, and it's still growing. As far as how many PMPs we have, there are roughly 1 million PMPs, a little bit less, but we're getting close to that. 1 million PMPs worldwide. How many PMPs we will need within the coming 5 years? Some of the numbers that I have seen talk about at least 10 times that number. So at least 10 million project managers. Project management was always important, and lately it's becoming more and more important as companies are finding out how important project management is for improving the chances of the organization executing its strategy. And PMI also focuses on that. We will talk about that. So some of the statistics that you will see in this slide talk about how many people have the PMP exam. I think at this time there are around 800,000 or so, as I said, around 1 million. There are other certifications provided by PMI, like the Certified Associate in Project Management. So let's say you are not ready for the PMP exam. You just graduated. Then you can take the Certified Associate in Project Management. Certified Associate in Project Management proves to employers that you are committed to a career in project management. The PMP, of course, requires 3 years of experience. And PMP is not the end. There's also Program Management Professional, which requires 8 years of experience in program and project management. There's also a similar one, but on the portfolio management side. There are quite a few. There's also risk management professional. There is a business analysis certification by PMI. There are quite a few out there. In addition, some people choose to go for other certifications like the PPM, Proficient Project Managers, on the way to their PMP certification. Some people do not have the time to study for the PMP. So they go through the class, but they do not have the time to put 100 hours of preparation to go for the exam. So they go for something like the PPM Proficient Project Manager certification, which requires much less time, and it's completely done online. So am I eligible for the PMP? To be eligible for the PMP, the main requirement is that you have 3 years of project management experience. Some people think that project management experience means that your title is project manager. That is not the case. As long as you are doing project management related activities. So if you are planning, that's a project management activity. If you are leading initiation, that's project management activities. Supervising, controlling the team on the project, evaluating how the project is going, preparing a performance report, all of that is project management and counts towards project management eligibility for the PMP. So if you are going for the PMP, you do not have to have the project manager title as long as you're doing project management activities for around 3 years. That's the main requirement for the exam. In addition, now after you are eligible to take the exam, to become PMP, you need to take the exam and pass it. One more requirement that I wanted to mention is that you need 35 hours of training in project management. And this training should be sufficient to provide you these hours, including the independent exercises that I will have you do throughout the training. And of course, you have to adhere to the code of conduct of PMI and pass the certification exam. So the certification exam, to know more about the exam, to know more about the certification, what I advise you to do is to go to the PMP Certification Handbook. You can download that directly from the link provided in the slide or from the PMI website. Just go to Certification PMP Certification Handbook and you should be able to find that. It's a very good handbook to read. It tells you everything you need to know about the PMP exam. That's one of the nice things I like about PMI is that they're really good with documentation, which is part of what they preach, which is really good. So you can read in the handbook. I advise you all to read the handbook to understand more what you are required to do and prepare to pass the PMP exam. Now, as far as fees, if you are a member, the fees for the members are $405, while for non-members it is $555, sorry. For non-members, it is $555. I always advise my students to become members because the difference between the fees for the PMP for non-members and members is the membership fee. So you will get all the benefits of the PMI membership, like the website access, resources access, career access, standards access. You can get standards, all the standards, including the PIM book, electronically online if you are a member. You also get the PMI network, PM network magazine. You get also the PMI journal, etc. So it's a good investment to go about that. Now, if God forbids, and many people unfortunately do not pass the exam the first time. Now, one thing I will tell you, if you study the way I tell you to study, you will pass. There is no reason you will not pass the exam. The only reason that I see for not passing the exam, if you follow exactly the steps that I give you, the only reason would be problem with taking exams. You do not feel comfortable in the exam room, fear, or being uncomfortable with comprehending English. Not comprehending hearing, but comprehending what you read in English. If you don't have these problems, if you follow the steps I give you, you should be able to pass. But it requires proper preparation. If you do not have the time for that level of preparation, some people say 100, some people say 200 hours, then I advise you to look at the Proficient Project Manager certification as a first step, which is also based on the PMP material. It's based on PMI PIM book, and it's a good first step that will give you encouragement to go. It's a good first step that will give you encouragement to go for the PMP exam. The PMP Candidate Application is very simple to fill online. I'd like you to go online, fill the application, but not now, after we finish the course, because you need to have taken the course before you go into the application. You have to fill in the form. In the form, they will ask you if you have taken 35 hours of training in project management. This course suffices for the 35 hours. This course is from a registered education provider. Simulation Powered Learning is the name of the company. Previous name is Fisher. They are based in Minnesota. And this course is based on their material. This is actually their course and their program. So this is a registered education provider for PMI. So I need you to complete the application online. You will need to fill an experience verification form. The experience verification form talks about what have you done in project management before. They want to know, have you done project management? Have you done initiating? Have you done planning? Have you done execution, etc. Make sure when you fill the application that you talk about what you have done in real life related to interpretation or implementation of what's in the PIM book. One important point, this is probably the only point that you can get wrong, and I've seen people get it wrong. Don't fill in the application things related to technical stuff versus management stuff. Meaning, if you tell PMI that you have 5 years of experience designing buildings, that does not apply. That is not project management. If you have 2 years experience programming using .NET, that does not count either. So if you say, I have 3 years experience managing programming or software development projects, then definitely that counts. Or if you can say that my experience includes preparing teams for or if you say that my experience includes supervising team members working on the project, preparing performance reports, preparing plans, preparing initiation charters, doing risk management, all of that applies. So check the PIM book, make sure that what you fill in the application is something PMI considers project management. So don't focus on design. Don't tell me I designed something. Don't tell me I wrote a book. Don't tell me I prepared the design for the campaign, for a marketing campaign. That does not work. Tell me that I planned the campaign, I led the execution of the campaign, I created the team for it, I developed the team, I managed the team, I closed the project, fine. Okay, so don't focus on technical, focus on the management part when you fill the application. Now, once you send your application in, 10% of applications get audited. Not all of them, 10%. And now auditing is random. They will not pick on you to audit you. So the auditing is random. 10% of the applications are audited. I've had lots of people, I've heard about lots of people from my students who got audited, no problem there. As long as what you have filled is accurate, you have no worries about the auditing. In the auditing, basically, they want you to send proof of what you have filled in the application. They want you to send proof of your education, proof of the 35 hours, proof of your project management experience. Now, on the proof of your project management experience, what happens is that they will contact probably the people you provided as contacts who know about your project management experience. So make sure, here's another point that I see people make mistakes in. Don't send in a contact information unless you know that information is correct, is accurate, because you will get in trouble otherwise. Also, don't send a contact unless you know this contact is willing to give you reference. Some contacts are busy. Some contacts don't read their emails. Some contacts forgot about you maybe, are not interested in helping. So make sure whoever you put as a contact is someone who will respond to PMI. Very important. Other than that, you should not have any problem with the audits. I've never had anybody fail an audit. Never. And I've trained thousands of people already on the PMP. I've never seen anybody fail an audit. After you fill the application, you will get an eligibility letter. Now, after that, you need to prepare for the exam beyond the training, beyond what you get from the training. Okay? Now, I'm hoping all of you will pass the first time, but people do fail after taking the first exam. It happens. I've had some people fail the exam. As I said, always when I ask people about how they prepared, you would always find a flaw with their preparation when they don't pass. People who pass, you find they are very structured and methodical in how they prepared. And believe me, it's not about how much experience in project management you have, whether you pass or not. A good friend of mine has 25 years of experience in project management. He was never interested in taking the PMP before, but he decided to do it. He's an excellent project manager. I know his work. He worked with some of the biggest car manufacturers worldwide. He's very good. He's an excellent project manager, and he did not pass. What happened is that he did not prepare properly. That's basically what happened. He did not have time to prepare properly. So if you are methodical in how you prepare, you should be able to pass. Now, you have 3 attempts on taking the exam. First attempt, second, and third attempt. So if someone does not pass the first time, they can take it the second time, they can take it the third time, but after the third time, you have to wait for a whole year before you can take the exam again. So that's another shortcoming also that makes people nervous. But there's no need, actually. You can pass the first time if you follow the directions properly. Now, the exam locations, regardless of where you are worldwide, you will be able to find an exam location close to you, and you will be able to take the exam. Usually, exam locations are prometric testing centers. There's no date. People ask me, what is the date for the next PMP exam? There is no date for the PMP exam. It's always going on year-round, and you can schedule the date that meets your needs. So it's not like you go to the exam and you find 100 other PMPs taking the same exam. It's not like that. You go to the exam and somebody next to you is probably maybe taking the SAT exam or a TOEFL exam or any other exam. So you just go at a time that's convenient to you and that is available at the Prometric Testing Center and take the exam. Let's talk about the exam itself. Now, the exam is computer-based. In the beginning, they give you a 15-minute tutorial. In the beginning, they give you a 15-minute tutorial. The exam is 200 questions. Out of these 200 questions, 25 of the questions are considered pre-test questions. What does that mean? It means they don't count towards your score. Your score is calculated out of 175. The other 25 questions are there for future exams. They are testing the questions, not testing you on them. So these don't count, but you will not know which ones count, which ones do not. So treat all questions with respect. Now, one thing you can do is if a question you cannot answer or you're not sure of, just assume it is one of the 25. This way you will feel better. No, but really you have to treat all exam questions equally and be careful about answering them properly. You have 4 hours to complete the exam. That is not lots of time. It might sound like a lot of time, but it is not. Here's another thing that I notice people get in trouble with. Smokers. Smokers have a very difficult time in the PMP exam. They keep leaving and they go and smoke. And they lose time and they get stressed over losing time during the smoking. So you have 4 hours to complete. That's 72 seconds per question. That's not a lot. Now, I don't think time is tight on the exam, but you need to manage time properly. And I'll give you some tips on how to manage time. One of the things that I do is to advise my students is to say, you know, we have about 72 seconds for each one of the questions. Let's say it is 1 minute per question. So after 10 minutes, I should be done with 10 questions. After half an hour, I should be done with 30 questions. That way, I'll keep checking my watch, I'll keep checking the time and see how I'm doing. If I'm a little bit behind, I push a little bit faster. If I'm a little bit ahead, I feel more comfortable with the time. And don't worry, if you are behind, many people I know went to the exam in the beginning, they were behind. They got, you know, you never know which question you will get first. Some of the questions, sometimes they take a long time. Some people, just by luck, by random, they get lots of questions in the beginning that take lots of time. But after that, the questions become shorter and faster. So don't despair. You know, just manage your time, stay objective, breathe. Breathing is key. Now, at the end, you will have a satisfaction survey that you can fill. You do not have to fill. It's optional. And after that, you will get the exam report. Immediately after you finish the exam, you will get the results, whether you passed or passed. That's what I'm hoping, that everybody here will be able to pass. So what is the passing grade? PMI does not confess to a passing grade. However, rumors have it that if you get 61% of the questions right, you should be able to pass. 61% of the questions. So that's around 106 questions right. You should be able to pass. But This is not formal. This is rumors. Now, where do the questions come from? I mentioned earlier that I actually was with a group of PMPs who put together the exam questions. This was a while ago. If I remember correctly, this was in 1999 or 98. At the time, I was working on a year 2000 remediation project for a utilities company in Michigan, and I did not have the time to teach PMP exam courses. Because, see, if you do the questions, if you participate in developing questions, you're not allowed to teach the course for, I think, a year or 2 years. And I was busy with the Y2K at that time, so it did not matter. I remember what they told us to do is, first of all, they did not want anybody who has lots of experience but has not studied properly for the exam. They don't want that to be enough to pass. Also, they did not want reading the PIM book and just understanding the concept without having the actual experience of implementing in real life. They did not want that to be enough to pass the exam. They wanted a combination of both: preparing, reading the PIM book, understanding it, understanding its concepts, and the ability to apply that in real life in a practical way. This is what they're after. So all the trickiness that you will see in the PMP exam, in the practice exam, what they're trying to do is to ensure those who have the experience implementing these processes pass. That's the idea. So sometimes they get too tricky, in my opinion, with the exam questions. But once you get used to the practice exam questions, how they ask questions, you should be okay. Now, these exam questions, as I mentioned, are put together by PMPs, groups of PMPs that are chosen as volunteers, and they put together these exam questions. They are based on PMP textbooks, not only the PIM book. Some people say that they think that the exam is only based on the PIM book. It's actually based on many PM textbooks. And of course, the most important one is the PIM book. I do not recommend having to read any other reference other than the PIM book, but there are other books out there that you can refer to, of course. In my opinion, if you go through the material, the way I ask you to go through it, do the exercises I request you to do. If you do the PIM book reading, which I think is essential, and then if you do the practice exam questions, enough practice exam questions, the proper way, as I will show you what the proper way is, then you should be okay to pass the exam. Now, the exam questions change, and they are not out there. They're not available to the public, so don't expect you can go find them. They're not out there. Another thing sometimes people do a mistake with, they think they can study from the exam questions or from practice exams. So they take lots of practice exams and they think that's enough. That is not enough. Some people think that the training is enough. The training alone is not enough. What you need is the training, reading the PIM book, doing practice exam questions, and doing them until you get a certain percentage of exam questions right, certain percentage of exam questions right, recurrently, meaning not in one exam, on multiple exams. And not by repeating an exam where you did 50%, you repeat an exam and get 70%. That's not what I'm talking about. So if you repeat, if you do an exam, fresh exam you've never done before, another one after that, etc., you find them online, make them in groups of 50 questions. So if you do 75% or more recurringly, then you should be able to pass. The questions are divided as follows. If you check on the slide, you will see that the questions are 13% on initiating, 24% on planning, 30% on executing, 25% on monitoring and control, and 8% on closing. This is the percentage of questions that come on each one of the process groups. There are things you need to prepare. You need to be familiar with the PIM book guide definitions, glossary of terms of the PIM book. You need to read that, be familiar with it. You need the PIM book guide framework. You need to know that. That's the first few chapters in the PIM book. You need to get familiar with the processes of project management as they are put in the PIM book. And you need to know the inputs, the tools and techniques, and the outputs for each process and why they are important. This is key. One thing that I advise my students to do is to imagine the application of the process in real life and how the input of the process makes a difference in the quality of the output that comes from the process, and what the output from the process will look like, and how you will use the tools and techniques to ensure you get quality outputs. If you think about things that way, you can make things more practical and makes it easier to answer exam questions. Another thing that I advise my students to do is when you think about a process, try to think about the simplest application of the process. I'll give you an example. When we talk about a project charter, don't imagine a project charter for a complicated or a complex project. Think about a simple project charter for a simple project. When we think about developing the risk register, identifying the risks, the probability, the impact, the risk response, think about doing it for the simplest of projects. And then it will make better sense. It'll be easier to understand. On the multiple choice exam questions, you need to read the exam questions very carefully. Don't assume you know the answer immediately until you finish reading the exam question. Sometimes towards the end, the exam question, and you might change your mind about the exam question. What would be the right answer? Also read the 4 choices. All the exam questions are multiple choice. Read the 4 choices that are provided. As you read the answers, one of the things that I advise my students to do is as you read the answer, the next answer you read, let's say you read A, if you read B, think about which one is more correct, A or B, before you move to C. And then you compare the more correct of A and B with C, etc. This will make it easier for you to find the right answer. One of the things I notice is that if you have studied properly, you will be able to eliminate 2 of the 4 answers as false. And then you might hesitate between the other 2 multiple choices. But if you look carefully again on them, you will be able to find what the right answer is. If you find that there is more than one correct answer, choose the most correct out of the list that you have. Even if you found that none of the answers satisfies what you think is correct, choose the one that is most correct of the answers. Look for certain words that might change the meaning of the question or the focus of the question, like always or never or sometimes or most of the time. There are lots of practice exams on the market. Now, what you need to do is before you go to do practice exams, make sure that you have studied and you are ready to go to practice exams. As I said, this can be a big problem if you go to practice exams immediately. You need to go through the course, which is what we're doing right now. You need to read the PIM book, then go to exam questions. When you go to exam questions, you will find that some of the exam questions that are out there are good exam questions, some are not so good, some are from previous or older versions, and some are not very well edited. So if you have studied, you will be able to tell which one is a good practice exam, which one is not that good. And I will give you references in the training as we go for places to look for exam questions towards the end, probably in the last module. After you go through this training, you need to start your study. After you take this training, you need to start the studying part. How much time should you dedicate to studying? You will find lots of different opinions out there. Some people say, I hardly studied. Some people say I put, 300-400 hours. It depends on the person. Now, Fisher talks about 50 to 150 hours. Other references talk about 100 to 200 hours. At the end of the day, what matters is what you do in the studying, not the amount of time and how focused you are. After you take the training, what you need to do is to read the PIM book. When you read the PIM book, after you finish it, at least read the PIM book once. I recommend twice, but at least read the PIM book once after you take the training. After you read the PIM book, then you go into practice exam questions, and I will give you references to some. You can buy some databases of practice exams, and there are some that are free online. That is up to you, what you buy. But you do practice exam questions. Now, once you see yourself scoring 75% or more on exam questions, then probably you are ready to take the exam. But you're not scoring 75% on exams that you have retaken. These are fresh, new exams that you take. This is why this is why you need to be careful with practice exams. Don't try to do all of them all of a sudden. What you need to do them in groups of 50 if you can. This way, you will not run out of these questions. Some people just do all of them in the beginning. That does not help you either. The way I want you to use the practice exams is that you do the first exam. After that, not only score it. It's not only the score that matters in the practice exam. Remember, it's a practice exam. So what you need to do is to look at the questions you got wrong and see why. Go check them in the PIM book. Go check them from the material. Check your understanding. Check why you are answering these wrong. Try to guess, try to fix that. After that, do another practice exam. Only after that you do another practice exam. When you do the second practice exam, then you do the same thing. Check, did you get the ones that you got wrong last time? Is it the same category that you're getting wrong this time? Then probably you did not fix the problem. If it's not the same category, that means probably you fixed it. And now another weakness is showing up. This is how I want you to do the exam questions. Practice exam, evaluate, study from the areas that you feel you need to refresh or go over, then go back to another exam, etc., until you get 75% or more of the questions right. On the exam day, do not study. The night before the exam, do not study. Get a good night's sleep. Don't forget to bring your eligibility letter. Don't forget to bring in your ID with you. Be comfortable, dress comfortably, breathe properly. If you meditate, maybe it's time for a little bit of meditation for the exam. I remember once I took the exam. One of the exams I took, I panicked halfway through. See, the exams I took the PMP when I was still young, at the beginning of my career. This was in 1991, I remember. And at the time, it did not matter to me whether I pass or fail. You know, it's not a big deal. I was not really pushed to pass. And I studied, and I went in. I succeeded. It worked. I passed. But as you accumulate experience, you become more experienced, then exams, I don't know, became a little bit more intimidating to me. And I remember once I panicked halfway through the exam, and I felt probably I'm not even close to passing. So one of the techniques I used, I'm not saying use this, but I'm saying one of the techniques I used, I said, okay, well, probably I'm not going to pass this exam. But let's see, this is where I am now. But let's see how much I can improve on that. And I took a deep breath, calm, deep breath, and I felt much more comfortable. And I was trying to improve on the score that I already felt that I will get. And I passed, actually. So different people have different ways to go through the exams. They deal with the exams. Just make sure you're comfortable, you are focused, you have done your studying, and go do it. If you find it helpful, you cannot take, unfortunately, cheat sheets to the exam. If you find it helpful, as soon as you walk into the exam, you can write the formulas that you need and you do not think you will memorize or you did not memorize. Write them down on a piece of paper so you can remember them. For me, I usually walk in, I already know the formulas. I don't need to write them down because I figured out a way to remember the formula. But if you need to write it down, go ahead and do that. In the coming few slides, you will find some feedback on the exam from previous Fisher students. You can look at these at your leisure. I suggest you do that now. Read them, see what people are saying about the exam. Mostly, it will be around things that I just mentioned, how you prepare. So please go ahead and read that, and we will come back and continue after the recent feedback. Let's talk now about the PIM book guide, your main reference for reading for the PMP exam. PIM book guide is very important. You have to go through it. Now, some people find it dry. It's a big standard. Now it went up, if you count the Agile section, it's more than 1,000 pages. So that might not be welcome reading for many, but it's necessary. So make sure you read the PIM book guide. You can either buy it hard copy from PMI or from Amazon, or you can download it electronically for free from the PMI website once you become a PMI member. It's an excellent reference for the processes of project management and the knowledge areas and the tools, etc. What does the PMP guide contain? The PMP guide, first of all, starts with the framework, talks about an introduction to project management, the project management in the context of the organization, the project management in summary, and then it goes into every knowledge area of project management, like integration, initiation, scope, communication, time, quality, etc. So this is done all through the PMP. This is what you will find. Of course, now they have the Agile extension to the PMP, which is now considered part of the PMP, and there will be questions. Now, according to PMI, they will ask questions related to Agile on the PMP exam. The PMP guide also talks about the process groups, talks about the initiating process group, planning, executing, monitoring and control, and the closing process groups. What we will do in this training is to take you through the things that you need to know from the PMP. And to make it more relatable to real world is that we will go through it based on how you apply it in real world, meaning through initiate, plan, execute, control, and close, versus going through knowledge areas. And that will make it easier for you to see how project management is applied, which is necessary to pass the exam. So let's start with the actual material. All of this was an introduction to the PMP exam. Now we will start with the project management framework. Project management framework, we will start with the introduction. In the introduction, we will start with definitions. What is a project? A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Look at this definition and tell me what you would highlight out of these words, out of the definition. What strikes you as important? Most will find two words very important. One of them is that the project is unique, and the other one is that the project is temporary. Temporary means has a beginning and end. If it does not end, it's not a project. So it has to have a beginning and an end. Also, it has to produce something unique. This something unique can be a product, like a building, like a software, like a marketing campaign. It can be a service, or it can be a result, a service like providing water services for a region of the city. You have to have a project to ensure we have all the necessary infrastructure to do that. So there is product, there is also service, and there is also results. Results are, what do we mean by results? Results, for example, we want to improve morale in the company. Then we can have a project to improve morale. We want to provide a certain service to a company. We want to start providing project management services to a company, or cleaning services for a company. So setting that up will require, preparing for that will require also a project. Now the actual service probably will be an operation, but preparing for that service is considered a project. So projects are temporary and they are unique. Temporary means have a beginning and an end, and unique means they are one of a kind. This is an important part of a project that people usually don't pay attention to. I mean, they talk about it, but they don't pay attention to. When you really understand that a project is unique, then you know you have only one chance to make it successful. That's what unique means. It means it's only one of a kind. Now, some might argue, if this project is about building a house, now how can we say this is unique? Millions of houses have been built before. Well, not this house. Not in this location. Not with these resources. Not for this customer. So every project is unique. Now, how unique is a project varies, of course, from one project to the other. If we are building, for example, when they did the iPad or the iPod, that is very unique because it has never been done before. Nothing has been similar to it before. Some might argue. But if I'm building a house and there were many other houses built before, then the uniqueness is a little bit less. So how unique, it can vary from one project to the other. But definitely, the outcome from every project has to be unique, one of a kind. This is very important. Another aspect that I use with my teams when we do a project, how I try to use the unique aspect to my advantage. I try to remember that we need to make the best out of this opportunity to provide value. This is what projects are about, providing value. So you have one chance to provide this value in this specific project. Now you might have other versions of the project in the future, no problem, but now I have a chance to provide value. How can I provide the best value there is for my client? And this is how I use the unique aspect to help me with project management. A few points related to projects. Projects are very important. Projects are used to drive change in an organization. The only reason you would want a project is that you need to create something new that does not already exist. If it already exists in our operations, then there is no need for the project. So just the fact that I need to have a project, that means I'm driving change. Every project is about change. In real life, this is also one of the most important points that is missed by project managers and by organizations when they deal with projects. They forget that there's a big change element in the project itself. They forget that there's a big change element in the project itself. So they don't do proper change management. They don't do proper organizational change management. They don't pay attention to the culture, to the people, to what needs to change in the attitudes when we deal with projects. So change management should be part of every project. So projects drive change. Also, projects are there and created to bring business value. This is another thing sometimes we forget as engineers or programmers. Sometimes we think what we're trying to do is to develop a software, or what we're trying to do is to build a building, or to provide a new camera, or a new iPad, or a new mobile. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring value. There's a reason we're creating this. We need to remember the value we are bringing. That's what the project is about. So the project is not about the technicalities of the project. It's not about the engineering work. It's about bringing the business value. And PMI is focusing more and more on that, and I think that is very important. Now, why do we initiate project? Initiation context. We need to understand that organizations initiate projects for a reason. Why do companies initiate projects? Companies initiate projects in pursuit of opportunities or trying to deal with a problem. I think all of that is under pursuing opportunities. That's why you would do a project. You're trying to get an opportunity, get a bigger market, get a better market, or you're trying to avoid a problem. Maybe your product is not reaching the customer. Maybe the product does not have the spec required that the customer needs. So what you're trying to do, we're initiating projects to create value, to pursue an opportunity. When we talk about projects, we need to understand what goes on in an organization. In an organization, from a project perspective, a project can be part of a portfolio of projects. A project can also be part of a program, and that in itself can be part of a portfolio. So when we look at that hierarchy, first of all, let's look at portfolios. Portfolios are everything, whether operation or projects or programs that is done in an organization. This is called a portfolio. When we talk about a program can be part of a portfolio. A program is a group of projects that collectively deliver a benefit that is not available from any of these projects separately. So we need the collection of these projects in a certain order or sequence to be able to get the value. We will talk about that a little bit more. And then we can have projects. So it's not only about project management. There is something called program management and portfolio management, which we need to understand for PMP, but they are out of scope of the PMP exam. So what's the relationship between portfolio management, program management, and project management? Portfolio management, think about it at the organizational level. Portfolio is everything the organization is trying to do to achieve its strategy. Now, the program probably handles a specific benefit that we are trying to bring into the organization. So the portfolio can include many programs and include many projects, and they are all trying to fulfill a certain strategy. Now, a program might be fulfilling a certain benefit, trying to get a certain benefit for the organization. So a program might be a program to improve efficiency. It can be a program to have a paperless community. It can be a program, etc. So it tries to bring a benefit. It's not about a deliverable. When we talk about a project, we're after a specific deliverable. And we will talk about the difference between these a little bit more. So when you think about a project, think about something we are delivering, a product, service, or result. When you think about a program, think beyond the deliverable. Think about the benefit. At the end of the day, I don't want the deliverable. I'll give you an example. Let's say we work for a telecom company. The telecom company will have a project to open a new branch, let's say in a certain territory. The project, the deliverable from the project is a branch that is ready to operate, which means we have the shop in place, decoration, the equipment, the products, maybe the marketing campaign, whatever. So there are certain things. So as a project manager, when I deliver, I say, okay, I'm done when I deliver these deliverables. However, I might deliver and we do not have actually an improvement in sales in that territory. Okay, so the project has been delivered, but the benefit has not happened. I might deliver this store, but it did not serve the community for some reason. It's too far, it's not in the right place, it does not look right for whatever reason. But the benefit, if you are a program manager, if you are a project manager, you can say, I'm done. If you are a program manager, you cannot say, I'm done. Because they say, we did not ask you to do a store. We wanted to provide benefit to the local community, which is the local community making use of this store. So the program includes having that store in operation also, not only preparing the store. And maybe doing a few more projects beyond launching the store to ensure that you are delivering the benefit. For example, doing awareness sessions, doing marketing campaigns, maybe opening a couple more small mini branches, whatever. This is program management. Now, all of this becomes part of the portfolio of the organization. And for the organization, they have this benefit of serving a certain territory, but they might have other territories that they are trying to serve. And they might be trying to do beyond actually extending their outreach. Part of their strategy might also be improving effectiveness, improving quality, and each one of these might have programs and might have projects. So what is project management? Project management is the application of skills, knowledge, tools and techniques to project activities in order to meet requirements. So the key here is that there are requirements that need to be met. The key here is that there is a project and we need to apply whatever knowledge, skills, and tools and techniques we have to the project to ensure its success. Now, when we talk about requirements of a project, these are certain things that need to be fulfilled for our projects to be considered complete and successful. Okay? And we apply project management to project activities, meaning the work that is done during the project. Now, project management has many knowledge areas. These knowledge areas, we can consider them domains of knowledge. These knowledge areas are important, and the interesting thing is that none of them is implemented on its own. The knowledge areas are integration, project integration management, scope management, time, cost, quality, communication, human resources, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management. See, none of this is applied in real life on its own. What happens is that you integrate all of these knowledge areas together to do project management properly. So one of the most important knowledge areas is integration management, which ensures that we integrate all of these knowledge areas together in order to apply project management properly. So what does integration mean? Think about integration this way. As a project manager, on any given day, you do not say, I'm doing time management today, but tomorrow I will do cost management. That does not work. What happens is that all of that is done integrated together. So at any one point, in the project on any specific time, you're doing all of these knowledge areas together. I'll give you an example. Let's say that I'm looking at the schedule and I notice that the schedule has a delay. Now I need to look at that delay, how it might affect the cost of the project. Has it affected the scope of the project? Anything I need to do on the scope side to deal with this delay? How does it affect the quality? How does it affect the risk? How do I need to manage stakeholders as related to this delay? So you're never really doing time management alone. You're doing it integrated with all the other knowledge areas. And this is, by the way, one of the toughest areas for project managers in real life, is to be able to integrate all these knowledge areas together. And we will talk more about that. Now, project management is applied through process groups. Now, these process groups start with the initiating process group, then the planning process group. Now, notice planning and executing are done in a cycle. We have planning and executing as a cycle. And we have also monitoring and controlling all over this period. During my planning and executing, I'm doing monitoring and control until all the work of the project is done, and then I go into closing. Now, initiation starts at the beginning of the project or the phase, and then we plan. Now, what do we mean by initiation? Initiation is formal authorization of my project or phase. Notice that these process groups are not applied only to the project, they're applied to every phase in the project, because every phase requires initiation. We'll talk about that now. Initiation then requires planning. Planning means putting a roadmap on how I will execute this project and meet the requirements. Then comes execution. Now, in execution, when you execute the project, you're executing the plan, basically. So whatever you said you will do in the plan, you end up executing in the project. Then where does monitoring and control come? Monitoring and controlling comes into play by comparing between what I did in execution and what I said I will do in planning. That's the role of monitoring and controlling. Now, the differences are called variations or variances between the plan and what actually got executed. From these variances, we might have to do change orders if these are caused by or require changes, or they might require certain actions. They might require certain actions to fix a certain problem, called corrective action. Or it might require preventive action to prevent a problem from happening in the future. So you end up during the project going through the cycle of planning and executing, monitoring and control until all the work of the project is done, then you go into closing. Of course, it can be all the work of the project done or all the work of a phase is done, because this also applies to a phase. And then finally you go into closing. If you're going to another phase, then you initiate the next phase, etc. Now, we talked about phases. This gets us into talking about what we call the project life cycle. What do we mean by a project life cycle? Now, the project life cycle is the project from the beginning to the end, including all the phases involved to go from the beginning to the end. This is what's called the project life cycle. So it's the cycle that takes us from the beginning of the project to the end of the project. Throughout the life cycle, there are phases. These phases might be in sequence, one after the other. They might be in parallel. What type of phases we have and how we set the phases will depend on the type of life cycle we use. Let's talk about that. Now, we need to understand what is the difference between the process groups and the project life cycle. I do lots of assessments for clients on their project management processes. And one of the common mistakes that I see at clients is that they mistake the project management process groups. Remember, we talked about this. These are the initiating, planning, executing, control, and closure. These are called process groups. They confuse the process groups with the project life cycle. These are not the same thing. Now, the project life cycle are the phases that we go through from the beginning of the project to the end to get the project done. To give you an example, when we are talking about a construction project, let's say we are building a house. Probably the first phase will be the design, and then the next phase would be excavation. For example, I'm giving this as an example. I'm not saying this is how it should be, the life cycle. It could be design, and then we go excavation, and then we do the foundation, and then it was skeleton, and then we do the finishing. These can be phases of the project. Now, how do we manage these phases of the project? We manage them using the project process groups, the project management process groups. So notice we have phases, as you see in this drawing, we have phases. Each phase requires management. So each one of these phases we talked about for this building, for the house, for example, you have to go into initiate, plan, execute, control, and close. And same thing you have to do for the whole project. So notice the difference between the two. Process groups tell you how to manage each phase and the project. The life cycle tells you how to build the product or the outcome of the project, like the house. So the outcome from the project management process groups is management documents, like a plan, like change requests, like scope validation documents, like quality control tests results, like a closure report, etc., etc. But the outcomes from the phases are deliverables, like, and from the project, for example, one of the deliverables is the house, for example, you see. So think about the phases. I'll give you another example. From a project management perspective, I can tell you that regardless of the project you are working on, whether complex, whether simple, you have to, I know how to manage it. It has to be initiated, planned, executed, controlled, and closed. But if you ask me, how do we build a rocket? That's not my area of expertise. A rocket will require a rocket scientist to tell you what are the phases of the project. However, I can tell you how the rocket building project will be managed. So I know that regardless of the project, building, program, software, anything you want, everything will require initiate, plan, execute, control, and close. But the life cycle will vary depending on the product. I hope that's clear because it's very important. Now, in a project life cycle, the project life cycle phases do not have to be in sequence. They can be in parallel, as you can see in this drawing. So we can have phase 1, 2, and 4 in sequence, and phase 3 going in parallel. One of the things you need to remember that each phase must have clear, measurable deliverables. This is also one of the big mistakes you see on projects, is that we define a phase, but how do we know that the phase is complete? And then we end up having challenges of deciding, has the phase been completed? Has it not been completed? It sounds simple, but in reality, problems happen in this. I'll give you an example, tell you a story. It did not have a happy ending, unfortunately, but it's a very important story. A client asked me to do a project health check. Now, the project health check means that we have to give an independent opinion as a consultant of how the project is going. Now, this project was towards the end. They were like doing the final phases. It was a B2B project, business-to-business project, and they were building a platform online. And this platform, they were building a portal. And without going into the detail of what they were building, they were very close to launching. They were like 1 month away from launch. So I was brought in as an independent consultant to do what we call the project health check. So I remember the CEO, when I was brought in, he was saying, listen, Ammar, we're actually 4 to 6 weeks away from launching. We have been working for a year, but we just want to make sure that we did not miss anything. So one of the first things that you need to do, this is related to the project lifecycle. So when you are a project manager or doing a health check, one of the first things that I do, I ask for the project lifecycle. I ask, what are the phases of the project? So they showed me the phases. They were in the last phase, sure enough. Then I ask, the other question is that what is the deliverable from each one of the phases? You said you finished phases 1 through 3, and you're now in the middle of 4. Show me what should be an outcome, what should be the deliverable from phase 1. Deliverable is the outcome, and it has to be measurable. They said, well, this should be the deliverable. I said, okay, is it done? They say, yeah, absolutely done. I say, can I see it? So they show it to me, And they say, well, this one part is actually missing. And this one part is maybe 1% of the project. From phase one, imagine, even though they were in the last phase, they said this specific component, there's an item in this component that we could not figure out. It's not working out the way we want it to work. We talked out to the manufacturer, we talked to a couple of programmers about how to fix this, and we're still working on this specific item, specific component. I said, oh, so phase one is not done. They said, yeah, it's not done, but it's just a small part. So when will it be done? They said, well, it might be done by tomorrow. Okay, and it might not. They say, yeah, it might not. So what's the worst case? I said, we don't know. We don't have an answer. So we put that aside. We look at phase two. Is it complete? Yes. Show me the outcomes. And again, something missing. The reason something missing in phase two is that the item, the component that's missing in phase one, affects part of the outcome in phase two. This is not good news in a project. When you're saying you're almost done, and then we find out, this is why in projects, we end up people saying we are 99% done after 1 year, and it takes another year to finish the other 1%, because of lack of understanding of the need to verify the deliverables from each one of the phases. And then we found out that definitely the project needed another year to finish because of this problem, unfortunately. So you have to be very careful about identifying what are the deliverables that come out from each phase. So we know, at least if it's not ready and we're willing to take the risk to go into the next phase without the items from phase one being ready, at least we know we're doing that. And we know what kind of risk we are taking. So that's why the life cycle definition is important. That's why you need to understand the difference between phases and the process groups. Now, what are the different types of life cycles? There are 3 types of life cycles that you see in organizations. There's the traditional life cycle, which is called predictive life cycle. There is the iterative life cycle, and there is the adaptive life cycle. Now, the most traditional is the predictive. And then companies started going into the iterative. Iterative means that we don't do the phase only once. We might iterate the same phase until we get the result that we want. Now, the adaptive went a step further and made the phases much shorter. So instead of a phase taking 3 months, a phase might take, it's not even a phase, it's like a sprint. It might take like a couple of weeks. So what happened, instead of having like a waterfall, they call it waterfall approach to a project, where one phase finishes and we don't come back to it, and we move through phases. In iterative, the same phase might be repeated again until we get the outcome that we need. In the adaptive, we make the phases very short, and we deal with very specific functionalities that we need from each phase, and we can make them very short. As I said, it might be a couple of weeks. And we move and we elaborate on what we built as we go. This is the adaptive. This agile is part of this adaptive life cycle. The most common, the waterfall, is part of the predictive life cycle. And the iterative in the middle, like the rational unified process, is considered iterative. And you can say, if you use it, depending on how you use it, you can take it actually into the adaptive. Today, people are talking about agile a lot, but in reality, most use a hybrid of both the predictive and the agile. And maybe we'll give examples of that as we go. So here's a slide that describes the difference between the life cycles. The predictive, you see clear phases, and usually they are good size as time-wise phases. Then you see the iterative, where you try actually to go through an iteration from beginning, from design through testing in one phase before, and you can repeat that again and again as you go. And you can go into adaptive, which makes these iterations much shorter, much smaller, so that we can actually focus on one functionality for a short period of time, get an outcome before we move into the next functionality. And we said this is very similar to what Agile does. Now, I'd like you to do an exercise just to bring this to reality. I want you to think about projects you've worked on before. What was the life cycle? And the life cycle used, how did it affect the outcomes and the success and the risks that were taken on the project? And also think about how actually the project manager dealt with the different phases in the life cycles using the project management process groups. This is an important exercise that I would like you to do. Now, there are business documents that we need to talk about as related to project management. These are very important in the project. One of these documents is the business case. Business case makes the case for the project. Why should we do this project? Why this project in specific? It's like a feasibility study. And it shows economically and business-wise and benefit-wise why we should do this project. This can be a very simple document, can be a very complicated document, depending on what we are trying to do and the importance and the complexity of the project. Another thing we need to talk about is what goes into the business case. You might define the need for the project, the need for the outcome of the project, what are the benefits, what are the alternatives, what do we recommend, how we evaluated, how we decided on the project, etc. Another business document is the benefits management plan. This is a newcomer on the PMBOK. Of course, it has been there for the program management because program management is all about benefits management. This is a very important edition which talks about the benefits. What are the benefits we're expecting this project to deliver? Benefits management plan. What does the benefit management plan include? It includes the target benefits. It includes how does it align to strategy. It includes the time frame of delivering the benefit. How do we measure? This is very important, measurement of the benefit. What are the assumptions that we are making and what are the risks related to this benefit and fulfilling this benefit? Another document is the project charter. Project charter authorizes the project. It talks about the project from a business perspective. What's the purpose? What is the objective? How do we measure success? The key risks maybe, the key stakeholders, etc. It's a very important document on the project. We have also the project management plan. The project management plan is a roadmap that shows us how we will deliver this project. And we have project success measures, which talk about how do we measure success. This is very important and very difficult for most people. How do you measure success on the project? How do we determine that the project was successful? Most projects carry a level of success and a level of failure in them, hopefully more on the success side. And we need to be able to measure this success. We are done with the first part of this training, and now we will move to the second part.